Welcome to Hobby with Ollie. Ever look at a Space Marine Dreadnought and think, this is great and all, but it would be better if it was piloted by a blood-crazed lunatic? Meet the Death Company Dreadnought from Games Workshop. A Brutalis Dreadnought specifically for the Blood Angels Death Company, I'm going to show you how I painted up my copy of this miniature from the Blood Angels Death Company army box. This is going to be an intermediate tutorial, mostly just due to the size of the model. Stick around to the end so you can see what my favourite detail was from painting this model. We've got this and loads more to get through, so if you enjoy the video at any point in time, please be sure to hit the like button down below. I'll be breaking down each step into what I recommend for beginners, and then what I think you should do if you want to push yourself a little bit further. When I paint minis larger than infantry, I can find it sometimes a bit overwhelming to have to paint everything on a whole model. This is one reason why sub-assemblies are super useful, as well as allowing you to paint areas that might be obstructed if you built the whole model. I'm using sub-assemblies for the torso, the legs, both arms, and the Ironhail heavy stubber that sits on the top. I prime up my model in its sub-assemblies and we're ready to go. The majority of my time spent painting this model was on the black Death Company armour. Starting from a black prime, I went over the whole model with a thin layer of Vallejo black. This paint has a slightly different finish to our black primer, so if we need to tidy this up later, this is the paint that we'll need to use. Now let's start with our first edge highlight. I mixed black and sky blue in a 50-50 mix. You could use any cold neutral grey here, but I wanted to use this as I know that it's going to work with the sky blue that I want to use as my highlight colour later. This cold grey is applied to the edges of all the panels across the model in a line about a brush width thick. We aren't trying to make this super fine just yet. Sub-assemblies will help us here too, as they give us progress milestones as we go through our paint job. Not got a lot of time to paint? Try and just get the black armour panels done on the Ironhail heavy stubber, which is just a ring around the top. Or if you've got a major painting session, have a crack at doing the legs or the torso. Now, if you're a beginner, this is a fine place to stop. But if you want your edge highlights to shine through, apply a highlight of sky blue to the edges of the panels. Now we can make use of the side of the brush on really sharp edges to get a really thin, consistent highlight. Sometimes though, we don't have that luxury. In these areas, make sure that your paint is thin enough to flow easily off the brush and keep your brush upright, as I've found that this helps me to draw neater, thinner lines. Next, we'll start looking at the many details across the model, but just a suggestion, if you're enjoying the video, why not click subscribe? Really helps the channel and lets everybody know that there's something good going on here. For all those of you already subscribed, it really helps with growing the channel, so thank you all so much. Let's start with a quick win. We're going to paint up the Ironhail heavy stubber. As the majority of the model is black, the weapons are going to be painted red to stand out. Start off with Mephiston red applied as a base coat. For the metals, apply a layer of gunmetal grey, but don't load your brush too much, as the streaky effect from a semi-loaded paintbrush over the black can help sell the effect of machined and worn metal. Highlight this with Stormhost silver around all the venting ports of the barrels and sharp edges. These guns are looking primed to shoot some enemy aircraft out of the sky, but they're only going to be able to do that if they can hit them, so let's work on the lens in the middle. Base coat this with deep green before applying a black wash into the area around the lens. Make sure that that's good and dry and then add some lime green into the deep green, about a 50-50 mix. We're going to apply this to the bottom left of the lens, taking up about half of the total area. Imagine a line dividing the lens from top left to bottom right, and we want to make sure we don't cross that line with our lighter colours. We're then going to apply a layer of pure lime green, which just covers a portion of the deep green lime green mix that we just applied. All that's left to do is apply a tiny dot of white to the top right of the lens to make it look really reflective. For our first highlight, we're going to use Evil Sun Scarlet. Finally, we're using Wild Rider Red as our second highlight. This is only going to go on sharp corners. And there we go, the Ironhail heavy stubber is all done. Now what's great is we can use the same techniques to paint parts on the torso, as the lenses, metallics, and even the weapons are painted in exactly the same way. But the next easiest part to paint is the legs. With the black armour complete, all we need to do is apply our metallic technique to the metal parts on the backs of the legs, as well as any other pistons or other parts we think could be metal. Okay, let's move on to the torso. For some of the wires I used corn red, but then to mix it up I made some with hazard stripes. For these I base coated them white before applying a layer of Imperial Fist contrast paint. This really is the easiest method I've found to get a really eye-catching and simple way of painting yellow. To get this to the next level, I apply black lines across the wire, trying to keep these even and wrapping all the way around. This may take a couple of attempts, as you see here, but just go back over with white and then yellow before going back in with the black lines until you're happy with the result. To highlight up the red wires, I add some Evil Sunz Scarlet and then some Wild Rider Red into my corn red, highlighting up the centre of the wire. Finishing off this bottom section of the torso, I use some medium sea grey to highlight the ribbed pipes. I also use this on any webbing that you can see between the panels of the armour. As mentioned before, we can start reusing some techniques that we've already learned here. For the central part of the torso, the metallics, lenses and wires are now all complete. Let's now move on to the only part that's new, which is that light in the top right hand corner. This got a coat of white and then fluorescent yellow to look a little bit different to the other yellow elements. I reblock in the grills over the top with black and then gunmetal over the light to complete the contrast. For the Death Company iconography on his chest plate, I start with a base coat of white grey, shading this down with a very thin black wash. Tidy up any areas that you need with white grey, and finally highlight up with white. This is going only on the tips of the bones and around to the eye sockets of the skull, places like that. For the chest Aquila, base coat Retributor Armour, I applied this almost exclusively with the side of my brush, leaving the black undercoat in the recesses. Over this is a lighter highlight with Liberator Gold, and to really make it shine, a final edge highlight of Stormhost Silver. Lots more details, so let's get the scroll on the chest sorted. Our base coat is Vallejo Dark Sand. We'll add some off-white into this to highlight and just go around all the edges, catching them with the side of your brush. This is a good place to leave it as a beginner, but if you're looking for a challenge, let's add some script. Mix Rhinox hide and black about 50-50. Thin this down a bit more than you would for usual paint. It needs to flow really nicely off the brush so that when we get our brush into the right position to draw a letter, we're not held back by the paint not moving. Now let's pray to the painting gods to keep our hands steady. You can make it a bit easier by mapping out some key letters to make sure you have enough space. For example, I want to write the word mortis, so I used the claws of the Aquila to show me where my R and my T were needing to go in the middle, and filling in the rest of the letters from there. Keep your brush upright to get a fine line. The saltire on his shoulder and the blood drops on the Death Company icon use the classic Mephiston Red, Evil Sunz Scarlet, Wild Rider Red triad. If you are interested in a bit more detail on this, check out last week's video on the Sanguinor, as he's absolutely festooned with blood gems. On to the final detail, and it's probably my favourite from the model. Glowing green power claws. These were base coated with a mix of deep green and black. To this, I applied random splotches of pure deep green, and then within these areas of deep green, lime green and deep green mixed together in a 50-50 ratio. This gives us a base coat, and now it's time to bring the lightning. Edge highlight with lime green, and then using thin white paint, I paint lightning patterns which fork off in all directions across the claws. When these hit the edges, I give them a bright white edge highlight to represent them hitting the edge and sparking off into the air. If you're feeling really brave, you can even do some little extra trails with tiny, even thinner lines that come off of the lightning. Just to tie it all together, I finished up with a glaze of deep green over the whole claw. With the last of his weapons polished, it's time to unleash this Death Company Dreadnought onto the enemies of the Imperium. Thanks so much for watching. I release videos like this every week, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to be notified when my next video goes live. If you can't get enough Hobby with Ollie, head to the description down below for a link to the Discord server. This is a place where like-minded hobbyists come together to chat all things hobby, biscuits, and unrelated nonsense. If subscribing on YouTube isn't enough for you and you want to support the channel a bit more directly, there's a couple of ways you can do so. The first of these is through my Element Games affiliate links. If you click on the link in the description down below, you'll get a link to Element Games. If you buy products from there, you get a discount off of Games Workshop products compared with buying from GW directly, and I get a small kickback at no additional cost to you. If that's not direct enough, you can also go straight to buymeacoffee.com, a fun way of providing your favourite creators with a little something something. It's really very much appreciated, and every penny I make on Hobby with Ollie goes straight back into the channel. Thank you so much to anyone who's used those links. Your support is very much appreciated. In the meantime, my name has been Ollie, this has been my hobby, and I'll see you next time.